Well, welcome. Welcome to this presentation where we're going to put the recapitulation record under the microscope. We have certain assumptions here, and that's that you've read the guidelines and the procedures, you know how to administer and score the inventory. Now, the purpose for this PowerPoint is to consider how to use the recapitulation record to guide instructional decision making. So for this PowerPoint, we're going to be looking at a case designed to find a comprehensive analysis of a student's reading performance so that we could establish both reading levels and an instructional plan. All right? How did you do the administration? You would have administered word list, and that means you did the flash and the untimed. You would have done the oral passages, and with that, the miscue analysis, the retelling, and the comprehension questions. Then, silent passage with retelling and comprehension questions. And now, we know how to face decision time. So, we're going to look at a recapitulation record. And here we have one, all right? And now what we're going to do is take that record and zoom in and look at certain parts. We'll begin with those parts of the recapitulation record that give you guidance about word recognition. And what are those parts? The word list, where you had a flash and an untimed. That's isolated, folks. That's not real reading. But then you had contextual reading in the form of two scores, a reading accuracy index and a meaning maintenance index. Those are the word recognition elements. But we're not going to stop there because we're going to say, how did these word recognition skills impact comprehension following oral reading? And if we look at grades 1 and 2, we're pretty comfortable, 100 across the board. All right? So move on to third grade. This is the student's current grade level, by the way. So this is the first element. We don't have 100%. We have a 95 on flash. So we say, grade level, we would have liked to see 100, but what's contextual reading telling us? Wow, pretty good. RAI of 100 and MMI of 100. So, what about comprehension? Pretty good too. Third grade reading with a comprehension score of 85. I think that's pretty good. So we go to fourth grade. When we looked, let's go back one. When we look at the word lists, we don't like what we see, folks, here. 85 and 95. But it's fourth grade. So we're not overly concerned, but there's some possibility. It would be nice if we had a little stronger word rec there, even though we're third. But look at this. Fourth grade. Folks, look at that contextual reading. 99 of an RAI and 100 of an MMI. So suddenly, those scores make the isolated scores less significant, right? Until we go to comprehension. And now we have a 60. And we're saying, with such strong contextual reading skills, there's something other than contextual reading that is causing that score of 60%. So, what can we conclude about word recognition? First and foremost, don't isolate word learning. And I can hear somebody say, well, what would that look like? Maybe you've only done isolated word learning. But guess what? There is analytic word learning, which is designed to eliminate isolated learning. So in order for me to show you this, I'm clicking on my little typewriter. Notice, students have silently read a story, they've discussed it, and even had some oral rereading. So now the teacher is set to do some skill development. So listen in as I take the role of the teacher. what did the mom say to the boy as he was running out the door? And the kid says, get your coat on. And so I write coat. Remember when they ran running down? Where were they running? To a stream, they say. Well, why were they going there? To get a boat. All right, so I write boat. All right, remember after they docked and they went running through that field? What happened? They were scared by a goat. All right, so notice what I have just done. I have elicited a pattern of sight vocabulary words. These were in the story. We discussed them. Everything's fine. Why are we doing this? So they could observe. They could observe the distinctive features that are essential to that phonetic principle. After they observe, I want them to generalize so that I could say, well, the next time you see a word that ends in OAT, what will you expect? And I want them to say, well, it'll rhyme like boat. All right, now I'm ready to isolate an unknown word, and I say, use that to help you with this word. And I didn't give a context. Use that to help you with the word. Now I want to see, can you apply that generalization to an unknown word? That's what you mean by analytic word learning. That's what this student needs. Next up, oral versus silent comprehension. And where do you find them? Right here is oral comprehension, and there's silent comprehension. Let's begin at second grade. 100% following oral reading at second, 85% following silent reading at the same level. Now, that's not a bad score, but the fact that it's so much lower than the score following oral. So I say, what happened at the current level of third grade? 85 following oral. That's still good. But look at here. Another big drop with silent reading. So we move now to the fourth grade where we had a 60% following oral and a 40% following silent. And I am sure that pattern is jumping out to you in the same way it jumped out to us. All right, so what did we decide about silent reading? The power of purpose. That's what this student needs to know, that reading is to develop meaning. We need to develop that student's view of reading. Why? Metacognition studies tell us we monitor what we view our reading to be. And if we read it, if we view it to be pronunciation, folks, that's what they'll monitor. So we need this student to view reading as meaning making. So somebody might say, well, what would that look like? Well, let's look here. Let's jump into this teacher. She's developed a concept map through interaction with students, and they jointly developed the message of that concept map here. Groups who mistreat others often have both personal consequences as well as group consequences. So what did the teacher say? Since we know good readers read purposefully, we're going to read this text to see how the author develops this theme we've just talked about. So on they go, internalizing the need to read for meaning. All right, time to look at retelling. Here's where we see the retelling score following oral versus retelling score following silent. Second grade, 2.5 versus 1.5. Third grade, current level, 2.5 versus 1.5. Again, did that jump out? But notice here, fourth grade is frustration, and the pattern breaks. So here's something to remember. When you're analyzing the data, you put less weight on the data that reflects frustration than you do the others. So for second and third, we have the consistency of a pattern, stronger following oral than silent. So, what conclusion? This reader appears to benefit from two modalities. That means as she reads, she listens to what she is saying out loud. In addition then to involving her in purpose setting related to themes like we saw, it's good to use text structure mapping for post-reading. What would that look like? We would bring this out and we would write our theme up here. I'm not going to take that. Then we would discuss and we'd say, now, first of all, we're going to look at ways, let me get this here, of gaining power. We're going to be looking at ways this group gained power. Here's where you put all the details from the passage. Now we're going to say treatment of others. And all of these details slots are filled in. And finally, reaction of others. So do you see what the teacher in designing this has to come up with what we call these powerful superordinates that the writer used to develop that theme. So this is as successful as the teacher's knowledge of how to categorize the information in a text. We're ready to move to question type. Where will we start? Text-based. That means recall of information. What do we find? And this is interesting, folks. 12 of 12. So here we have the student with success with text-based. Now, for silent, we had 9 of 12. So here with oral, even frustration. 9 of 12, folks, that's 75%. That's pretty good. When you consider all 3 passages, all 3 levels, including 6 passages, very strong text-based. So we move to inference. Following oral, look at this. At the 2 levels, because we're going to stick with just the second and third, we're not going to fourth here. But there were 5.5 of 6, or 92% success with inference. When we get to silent, though, we just had 3 of 6, which is 50%. So that red flag is going up. So until we go to see what critical response has. 5 of 6 following oral reading, silent reading 4.5, 75%. That is pretty good. So what can we conclude? You got it. The inference making following silent reading. So what do we do with instruction? Well, in addition to that purpose setting based on themes, we're going to suggest using higher level inference questions following post reading. So how do you design powerful inferences? This is what the teacher's saying to you, what she's learned to do. Identify a concept theme that was in the text and use that to create your question. So here's an example. How did the author help readers conclude that the leaders thought that there is strength in numbers? Folks, this is question the author type of question. And that's what this student could greatly benefit with. So our summary. Word recognition. Develop this within a contextual framework. Don't isolate. The only time you isolate, folks, is when you are assessing. Comprehension. Oral versus silent. Very strong following oral. But instruction in the form of purposeful reading has to follow or to be developed during silent reading. Why? That's authentic reading. Retelling, same as above, much stronger following oral. So what were we going to do? Develop text structure as post-reading. Question type, we need to help her with inferencing, right? So we're going to have higher level inference questions. Wow, isn't it exciting to be part of the process of climbing that ladder of success? That's all for now, but we will be back.